Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Play the Tape. I am your host, Derek J. Fields. Listen, full disclaimer, I always have to make this. I am not, but I'm working on it. I am not a licensed, trained psychiatrist, psychologist, drug, alcohol counselor, anything of that nature. But on Play the Tape, we will have had those people up here to give a different perspective of the mental health and substance use and addiction crisis here. But what Play the Tape is a platform of advocacy, support, and community for people with mental health conditions, substance use, and crisis intervention, and also suicide prevention. We educate. That's what we do here by experience, strength, and hope, by giving people hope through experience, through strength, and through my guests today. My guest today, I'm very excited about. I'm excited about all of my guests, but I'm excited because I love when I get the opportunity not to only interview my community with mental health conditions, with addiction, with substance use, with crisis management, but I love interviewing parents, mothers, uncles, cousins, people that were on the outside looking in and were impacted by a family member with mental health or addiction. And that is my guest today. She lives with her husband, Dr. Thomas Gennosa, in a small rural town in eastern North Carolina where she is a practicing physician assistant. She is a dedicated wife and mother who grew up the third child of a liquor and narcotics agent. That's interesting. Breadth of exposure to healthcare, the legal field, and parenting and an addict provided the foundation to reveal the things that we least want to talk about, but most need. She has done countless speaking engagements for the police, parole, correction officers, paramedics, nurse, and other hospital staff, as well as medical students, in an effort to create positive change and provide them with the much needed education on substance use disorder, mental health, and crisis intervention. My guest has dedicated time to work with the incarcerated men and women in an unprecedented heroin recovery program in North Carolina. I love that. I'm part of that too. I go speak to PCDC with the SHARP program. Absolutely. That's great. Her most valuable contribution came from the book, The Incredible Hope, which is a memoir, survivor guide for coping with loved one's addiction. It is a book that examines how substance use disorder, mental health, and trauma can collide with the legal and medical systems. But more importantly, it is a survival guide, a resource guide, and a desperately needed tour guide through the labyrinth of addiction as seen from the family's point of view. That's one of the reasons that I wanted you up here. Your book is incredible, but that family's point of view of that guide, that tour guide. So, without further ado, my guest, Lisa M. Gennosa. How you doing today?
I am doing very well today. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be able to share today with you guys, with everyone.
Absolutely. It's a blessing for you to be here. I'm very grateful for you to be here. You can start wherever you want. Now, there is transparency, honesty, there's no censorship. Share where you need to share. So again, the floor is yours. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Derek. I guess I'll just start a little bit of background because it's important for people to sort of understand who they're hearing from. I'm again a physician assistant in a small town. I grew up, I think you mentioned that my mom was a liquor and narcotics agent, and everybody kind of likes that little fun fact.
Yeah, that's an interesting fun fact.
It is. It is. I grew up in a law enforcement home and had to adapt to that, right? But it taught me a lot. And then as I was going along, I did get into the medical field and have been in the medical field for about over 25 years now. But I had a child. He's a child, unfortunately, of divorce. I was married before. And he, became sort of the center of all of this. He is the center of my world, right? All of our
Hmm.
kids are. But
Right.
he became the catalyst as to why I felt like it was so important to share with others. And um, so here I am. I'm getting things. I've really the book came out just this year, so things are just really underway in 2023, and it's been going exceptionally well. People, I really was so scared about it because I wasn't a designated writer. I wasn't someone that went to school for the literary arts. I went for biology, and so writing this was completely out of my comfort zone. But I did,
It
and
has a lot of research. It's very in depth. You couldn't
thank you.
with the finished product, you could not tell that that was the case. It's very thorough. It's very in depth. It's a very well, as I'm going to school to become a counselor,
Mhm.
it's something that I would definitely use as a study resource. It's not
Wow.
just a memoir, but it's a, like you
Yeah.
said, a survivor guide, and it has a lot of statistics, a lot of research, and
Yes.
a lot of study material that I appreciate
Mm.
that the average common folk don't know when it comes to mental health and
Yes.
substance use.
That's right. That's right. And I just thought all that information was something that I was gathering for well over a decade, probably nearly 15 years. I was gathering all that information for myself because I was trying to crack the code, why did this happen to my son? What can I do to help him? How can I get us through this? And so I was doing all this research for so long, and it occurred to me at some point after I started getting to the point of acceptance of what we were going through,
Hmm.
because it took that, that what I had gathered all those years might actually help other people. And little by little, individuals in my practice, family members and such, would start to talk to me about their own issues or their own family members because they felt a safe, it was a safe place because they knew that I was also going through that. And so I was spending a lot of time in the office sharing all these resources with people and trying to have these, conversations. In family medicine, we have limited time. So I really just started to compile all of this and compress the 15 years, nearly 15 years of information that I was trying to find for myself and my family and my son, and deliver that to other people so that they too could survive this, because it's hard.
It is. Uh,
Mhm.
you can. I'm going to ask some questions, and I always let my guests know if it's a question that you are don't want to share at this time. I respect that. I don't want to press or probe where it's not. Um, I don't want to go a place that you're not ready to share about because I feel like that's very important because some people
Yeah.
are more open to certain different things than
Mhm.
others. But I do want to ask because I'm curious and the listeners and the viewers are curious because they want
Mhm.
to understand your thought process and how, as a parent, as a mother of your son, of your child,
Yeah.
how did that how did that come about? What mental security or mental toll did it take on you when it was revealed to you? Because I know for a long time, I know for me, I hid it from my parents a long time until the point where it couldn't be, I couldn't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
The truth this disease will tell on you at some point because
Yes.
one, you don't act the same, you don't look the same, you don't behave the same, you don't
Mhm.
sound the same. Hey, are you okay? What's going on?
Yeah.
The anger, the sadness, the disappointment, the guilt, the shame, all that starts to reveal itself and come to a head. So for you, when your child, when your son, when that disease started to expose itself, how did what was the initial response? What was the initial, okay, what do we do?
Mhm. It's such a great question because I think a lot of parents go through this initial reaction of avoidance and denial. It's not really happening. This couldn't be happening to our family. We've had, everything's been a-okay. We're just, for my son in particular, he started drinking at 12, and we didn't really know until we didn't know the severity of the issue until he was in college. So there was about 8 years in there. Well, it's about six years in there. really, we were not clued in at all. And so when it did start to come to light, because, consequences start to happen, legal issues, medical issues, you know, financial issues, and he got kicked out of college. And so it's all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, we got a problem here.
Mm.
And my first response to that was denial. Oh, this is just a rite of passage. This is just a transition that he has to go through. He's drinking and trying, drugs like all young people do to, deal with their lack of confidence or whatever. And so I really wrote it off for a long time initially, but very, I think pretty quickly we really started to tune in. And when that happened, I really shut down. I really shut down. And they talk about people with substance use disorder um, avoiding, isolating.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, we do that too. And as a parent, I absolutely went into isolation mode. We didn't, interact with friends very much for a long time. We didn't talk to people. I didn't tell my family what was going on. I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything. I cried oceans and oceans and oceans of tears. And I just couldn't figure a way out. It was really hard for a long time until I got to the point of acceptance. And then
How long?
everything changed.
How long did that take to get to the point of acceptance? I know you said there was a 6-year period where the tuning in wasn't there to where it had should have been because of course the denial or no, not my child. Because
Right.
I'm the same. I'm with my daughter. Hers is a mental health aspect, and now that she's an adult, we can't, as parents, when your children reaches adulthood, to a certain degree, there's no way to force them into getting a counselor, seeing a psychiatrist or
Mhm.
psychologist. It's their choice now,
Right.
and that is very hard for a parent especially when you see the toll or the as the way the as is the way the world is leading them and the way their decision making is taking them
Yeah.
is not so good, to a path of self-destruction for the most part. And you just want to reach out and grab them, be like, hey, listen, you
Look out.
might want to go seek some help, please. Especially listen, look what happened to your dad. I am true experience and a witness of mental health struggle and substance use disorder.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize that I also needed psychiatric care on top
Yeah.
of special mental health when it comes to
Yeah.
treatment facilities and support groups. So when you went to and when you finally accepted what was going on with your son, was that the fire? Was that the igniter that, okay, now we need to do something, but how can we do something? What
Yeah.
can we do? Because from 12 to 18, okay, now he's an adult now. How do we approach an adult with our concerns?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So when there was a time,
Hmm.
it was, and I have it in the book, it was December 5th of 2017 when uh, everything changed. It was there's no way we can avoid this anymore. There's no hiding. It's all out. And that was when he was in a suicidal state. He was taken to the hospital for suicidal ideation. He had hit his head and he was intoxicated with a blood alcohol content of greater than 0.43, which,
Ooh.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
dead, which is deadly.
Yes.
And in the hospital, all the emergency room physician, the social worker, and the mental health physician all designated he had to go to a mental health facility. He was unarmed. He was not a danger to anybody else, but he was to himself because he was suicidal. So they said he had to go to a mental health facility that night. Well, they called a mental health deputy. This was in the state of Texas. They called a mental health deputy to transport him. And there were, an individual that is using is a volatile individual. He wasn't violent, but a lot of verbal volatility.
Right.
And he would kind of come in and out because they were shooting him with all kinds of stuff. And, it really takes away your capacity to be human in a lot of respects, a lot of the psych meds, right?
Yes.
And regardless, the mental health deputy, I believe, really escalated a situation that should have been de-escalated appropriately. And he actually got him out of bed, put him in handcuffs, put a bag over his head. He was completely exposed underneath his gown, and it was left open, and he was taken to jail. And in the jail, he had to beg to cup his hands over his private parts. And within about 12 to 14 hours, he was put in solitary confinement in withdrawals. So that was a moment. From that moment on, we knew we were dealing with a whole other level of severity. And we knew, once I got over my fury and my rage.
Yeah. Because I feel a little bit of that right now
Yeah.
myself. Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting because once I got over that, and he did go to rehab. It was court mandated. He went to rehab after he got out of jail. And things calmed down over several months, and he did have some sobriety. I felt it was just absolutely necessary that I get in front of officers and EMS and medical personnel to tell them our story, and to say, go back to find your empathy and your compassion, and understand that sometimes you have a person in front of you that needs your help and not your strong arm, not
Yeah.
what he.
Right. Not to re-traumatize a person. And
Exactly.
I was, I go speak at the, I speak all over just like you do. I go into the
Right.
institutions, the hospitals, the detention centers, the correction office, the correctional facilities. And I was at the law enforcement training here in Pitt County, and they do a CIT class. And CIT is Crisis Intervention Team. And it trains them, the law enforcement officers that are first responders, the people that are on the beat, the police officers, correctional officers. It trains them in de-escalating mental health, substance use, and crisis intervention, even in suicide prevention as well. It
Mhm.
educates them on how to, not necessarily, it gives them the tools to see, okay, this is a mental health or a substance use crisis, or even evolves into a suicide crisis. How can I come in here as a CIT trained officer, not re-traumatize this person, but also understand, okay, I understand that symptom because I'm not as familiar with it as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I'm familiar with it enough that I know that that person is not being violent, but a little volatile in their verbal or the way they're moving.
Mhm.
Where, okay, I need to call mobile crisis, integrated family services, get a licensed or certified counselor or therapist
Yes.
out here to give them more options than what that police officer did to your son. And I
Yeah.
believe that has to get out to be a nationwide thing. And I was speaking to them because I volunteer with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. A lot of them were voluntold to be there. And I told them, I said, regardless if you were voluntold, I'm going to give you a story on why it's important that you were here. I spoke at this church, and this mother, just like yourself, had a son that was dealing with a mental health crisis, and she had to call 911. She
Yeah.
didn't know that there was 988, which is a national, of course, call 911, but if there's a harm or a threat, but there's also 988 to the mental
Right.
health, substance use, and suicide prevention crisis. This is a national number, just like 911. She didn't know that there are, what do you call them, CIT officers? I was like, yes, ma'am. They are trained to de-escalate the situation and give your son or your child more options. And that just hurts my heart that he had to go through that. At the same time, maybe that I look at it as, it hurts my heart that he had to go through that, but maybe that was the thing that he needed to turn it around. So
Yeah.
I'm
I get
conflicted, right? So,
I
but
get that,
yeah,
but I will say that it did substantially re-traumatize him.
yes, yes, I know it
And
did, absolutely.
he's been getting, therapy for that ever since, because it's is so bad. But I will tell you that you and I have walked a lot of the similar paths. I can tell because I did worked with Trillium in Eastern Carolina for
Hmm.
crisis intervention training. That's where I went in to do the talks. I've done an editorial for NAMI. Um, I think what those organizations are doing is absolutely incredible and so timely. I will also share that the state is really now investing heavily into pre-arrest diversion
Yes.
skills. So I've been doing a lot of involvement with that, which is really providing the guidelines and the methodical transport of individuals into the right resources as opposed to incarceration, because it
Yes.
you know treating people as criminals when they have mental health is no longer considered okay in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. But I will also say that when I did those talks, when I went in from a place of empathy, actually, for the officers and all the individuals
Hmm.
involved, because what I realize is they are bombarded with just an enormous amount of trauma themselves. So they're coming up on scenes that no one else can really understand. Gunshot victims, very violent situations, death, shoot, they've had to shoot people, they've been shot at, this is something that the average citizen doesn't understand. So I understand they have their own mental health, they have their own compassion fatigue or burnout. And in my quest to say what happened that night, I had to say, did that mental health deputy have his own mental health issues? Was he
Mm,
burn out on his job? Is that why he treated my son that way?
that's a good
When
point.
when I came in to talk with for crisis intervention training, I turned the tides and I said, "Look, let's talk about your mental health. Let's talk about your burnout so that this doesn't happen again to anybody else. Because if you're in check, then the outcomes for everybody is going to be better for yourself and for the person that you're trying to help out there. If you come out with a bad attitude, you're, excuse me, pissed off, you're over it, you've seen the same person, overdose on heroin 3 times in the same day, and you're just sick of it, how are you going to treat the next person? And that's somewhat normal. That's a normal human response. You become apathetic over years and years of being pounded down.
Right.
And so when I did that, I had a lot of even like hardcore narcotics agents come up to me afterwards and say, kind of with their tears welled up because they heard my story. And they said, I have to do some self examination. I'm glad you were here today. I really need to look at myself and look how I'm treating people on the street.
I appreciate that. That's something that, if it's okay with you, I want to use when I go speak, because
Absolutely.
because it's always been taught to me that everyone needs someone to talk to. Everyone needs a
Yeah.
support group. Everyone needs therapy. Everyone needs a counselor or a psychiatrist that they relate to, that can give them
Yep.
that relief, to give them that support, and to unburden themselves. That is, I never thought about it on the law enforcement side or our first responder side. Like, hey, not only are y'all serving the community that needs y'all to be serve and protect, but we need y'all to be mentally cognitive,
Absolutely.
present and responsive for y'all self, to make sure you're not overly exhausted or burned out or apathy has set in. That is something that I never, because I've always looked at it as the mental health person or the substance person instead
Yeah.
of the provider, the
Yeah.
officer, the counselor.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing for your self-care, and what are you doing to support yourself and build yourself up? Fill your cup back up because you pour out so much.
I tell you where it came from. As a provider, when I was going through what I went through with my son, I was starting to have some compassion fatigue in the office, and I recognized it. And I'm really good at self-examination. I think it's important that we check ourselves,
Hmm.
be legit with yourself. If you're not feeling good, if you're not mentally able to take care of a situation, step back from it and ask somebody else to do the job. And it's really hard for officers and firefighters and things like that to do that. They have a image to protect and all those things. So I recognize that. And remember, my mom was in law enforcement, so I kind of had that medical side and law enforcement side. But in my own life, I was recognizing the symptoms of compassion fatigue, and it was not pretty. And I was really like ready to leave medicine and just felt inadequate, and you just second guess everything you're doing, and you are just not present. And I was like that because I was so sad and so, just in a bad place because of what we were going through. And so I had to say, what what are these guys going through? Is there are they have to be there's an incredible saying. I'm going to totally mess it up, but somebody, it's a quote, and it says something like, it's impossible to go through all the trauma and the stressors and everything that the daily misery that a lot of these first responders experience without having it affect you. It's like trying to walk through
Hmm.
water without getting wet.
Right.
Because absolutely, you will get wet in the field. You will experience pain. You have to still remain passionate and not passionate, but compassionate about who is in front of you. And if you're not in a good state of mind, don't put yourself out there with them because they need you. And that's what you went into the profession in the first place, for.
Absolutely. I always tell people to keep your humility and your humanity, because when you
Absolutely.
start to lose that, then it's time to take a step back and
Right.
reassess yourself and your purpose and what you want to do. I agree with that. Getting back to you, mother, this is my baby.
Mm.
Okay. I'm re-engaged. I'm past the denial. I'm accepting that there is an issue. What that officer did not like it, was not a fan of it. Okay,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to stay here. How now, as a mother of a child that is facing mental health and addiction crisis, how did you ignite yourself to, okay, what can I do that can benefit him and also not diminish me?
Mhm.
Because I think that leads into the lessons learned in your book in chapter 24. I
Mhm.
think that's a very good correlation of finding the balance of these 9 lessons to make it productive for your son, at the same time learning these lessons to keep your mental stability strong.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump into lessons learned chapter 24, and hopefully that'll answer some of those questions. Okay, so for lesson 1,
Absolutely.
allow yourself to let go.
Mhm.
Then I'm gonna read them all. Lesson 2 was create connections. Lesson 3, you can't do it for them. That is one that I'm definitely going to spend some time on, because I'll share that with you when I get, because I told my mom that understanding how you are enabling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
we got some stuff to talk about.
Yes.
I better drink my water 'cause, don't wanna have a bad
Absolutely.
throat.
Accept that you can release your addicted loved one. Accept that you
Yeah.
can release your addicted loved one. That is one I definitely want to talk about too. That is hard, and just releasing your children to let them learn and make mistakes. It's a hard one for me. No, lesson 6, do what works. Lesson 7, release yourself from guilt and judgment. Absolutely. Lesson 8, resist expectations and assumptions. That's a great one. And then the one for me, all of them, but lesson 9, find gratitude. So we go back to lesson 1, allow yourself to let go. What does that mean, allow yourself to let go? What did you have to allow yourself to let go? Also, on top of the denial, what also did you have to learn to let go?
Letting go means accepting what you are faced with and being able to, move forward. Letting go means, you know, for me it was just, the acceptance, and I can't emphasize enough that they tell individuals with substance use disorder,
Hmm.
admit that you have the problem. Once you admit that once you admit you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, or a person, I say a person with substance use disorder. That's how I label it, and I think that's an appropriate thing to label it
Yes.
like that. Once you accept that, then you can start to heal, right? But until you accept it, until you own it, until you admit it, until it's in front of you and you got it, you're gonna stay behind it. You're not gonna do anything about it. And so it was the same for me. I had to let go and accept that this was happening in our life. This was our family now. It wasn't this made up version of, you know, television baloney that we're fed. And I accepted, and then I was able, once I accepted and I said, this is our life, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay, and I'm not embarrassed about it.
Mm,
I'm going to share about it. And I let go of that guilt and shame and pain and lack of acceptance and denial. I let go of all of it so that I could essentially be free.
right. Yeah, I'm with you. As someone who is involved in 12-step program, that first step is admitting
Yeah.
and that there is a problem, that my life has become unmanageable, and it's something that and it's time for me to do something about it. In my desperation of not living that life anymore, I had to, and I'm using it as an addict point of view. I had to learn and allow myself to let go from that learned behavior.
Yeah.
How when trauma, depression, guilt, shame, or just numbing or partying or wanting to feel good, I had to learn how to let go, allow myself to let go and learn a new way to live. Absolutely. And then lesson two, create connections. One of the things that you talked about was other mothers, other parents, support groups, re- just communicating and
Yeah.
relatability with other people, especially moms, because you are a mom. But as a dad, I can relate to creating those different types of connections, like you talked about when you just spoke about when the people after you spoke come and talk to you about, man, that's so right. I didn't even think about the my own mental stability and how that's important when I go serve the community. That's a connection. Now
Yeah.
you now they're going to go look for connections because they
Yes.
might not even thought about it. So creating connections. Where did that come from?
Well, I just believe that the more connections we make, it comes back around, and it just keeps building and building. We got to connect these dots out there, because these dots that we are all doing with the podcast and with the news stations, what they're talking about so much more with the, the literature, everything that we're doing is connecting these dots, and we're all communicating now, and it's creating change. Finally, it's creating change. I'm a part of a program, or an association called Cure Addiction now, and they said something that was so profound to me. They said they just had a forum, and I was, I attended the forum, and they said, 30 years from now, we're going to look back on the way individuals with substance use disorder and mental health were treated. We're going to be absolutely ashamed of ourselves. We have come, I will say, with mental health, we have come so far from, say, 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
There was a change, and they talked about this with Cure Addiction now. There was a change, on the front cover of Time magazine. They had the bottle, I think it was Prozac, and it all of a sudden became a talk. In every home it was talked about, because everyone started to understand that mental health was okay to talk about, and that we need to communicate and we need to share. And 20, 30 years later, here we are. And I feel like we're in that same spot with substance use disorder. I feel the change. I feel the surge, the tidal wave coming in, and it's making a difference. But we're not there yet. I still think we're probably a decade away
Yes.
before we get to that point where we accept substance use disorder as a, mental health, or a disease, and
Hmm.
treat it as such, because it is a lifelong condition that we have to treat. We have to take care of. You have to take care of it psychologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You have to take care of it. Just like I take care of my diabetic patients for their lifetime, or my cardiovascular patients for their lifetime, I have to do that with substance use disorder now. And I still have to go in and train medical professionals on that. Not all of them are on board yet with understanding that that is a lifelong treatment, condition that they have to understand and treat appropriately. So
Uh,
it's building that community and having those conversations and not shutting down. The more we talk, the more it helps. And the more it helps, guess what? That comes back to you and
hmm.
your family. So who else is that going to help? It's going to help my son in the long run. I'm trying to help save lives by connecting these dots. And one of those lives is my son.
Right.
It comes back around. That's why we can't sit in isolation and not communicate and not share.
I really appreciate that. Creating connections is a part of my recovery
Me too.
journey. Is in all aspects,
Me too.
and I agree with you. The advocacy, the advocate for ourselves, the support for ourselves, the education for ourselves. All that builds connection, and then of course it goes back to allowing yourself to feel that humanity and that humility as you connect with these people and understand, like, wow, that's why I love peer support. That's why I love group talk therapy. It's one of the things for me I enjoy. Don't get me wrong, I love my one-on-ones, but I enjoy peer support, learning from my peers that
Yes,
maybe haven't walked in their shoes, but there are similarities. And we connect on that hope. So I'm very grateful the way you put that. Lesson three. Lesson three is you can't do it for them. That is one that was tough for my mom to handle.
me too.
I it was, she'll tell you right now, Miss Lisa, she'll tell you right now, Derek told me that he wasn't going to change until he was ready.
Yeah,
And I didn't want to believe it until I saw it. And he was right. He did not want recovery. He did not want healing. He did not want to hear and create these connections and allow myself to let go. And all the 1 through 3, he did 1 through 2. And now in the 3 lessons, he did not want it until he wanted it for himself.
yeah,
So understanding that your son didn't want it until he needed it, until he was in desperation to receive it.
correct.
How did that make you feel that you couldn't do it for them? Because as parents, we want to do it for them.
Yeah, we do. Angry, but it was all wrong. The more I was trying to do it for him, the more I was telling him he couldn't do it for himself. And I was fueling his lack of confidence because he had a lack of confidence. That was sort of the underlying feature that was there even when he first started drinking. And so it's, that was a coping mechanism, and it was the ability to feel a little more at ease in, awkward situations. And so as we were going along, I was doing more and more, and look, I was trying to, I thought I could buy our way out of it. We're not super wealthy, but we're in a position now in this phase of my life. I've lived in poverty before, and I've lived, comfortably, I guess, and I've lived kind of everywhere in between. So as someone with, a comfort level, I thought, well, we could just buy our way out of this, or we can, you know, essentially do it for him. And that was taking away all of his autonomy. It was taking away his ability to think critically through his own situations. After a while, he was like, "Well, my mom's gonna do it for me. Why do I need to do it?"
Hmm.
And that was horrible. I made every mistake in the book on that one. And we talk about it now, and I've apologized, but he doesn't want me to apologize. He's um very in tune with his part of everything that's happened, and where
Good.
and what I did wrong, or what I did as a mom. I know it was wrong, but he thought, I was just being a typical mom to some degree,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
It is.
It is what y'all do. And I love it. And but sometimes it's frustrating. But yeah, it is what you
Yeah.
do. Once the fog clears, you like, because that goes to lesson 4, understanding how you are enabling. My
Yes.
mother, as I would call my mom, dad too, but mostly mom. We always go to mom before we go to dad. I know
Yeah.
I did.
We're
I know I
soft
did.
on that, big
Yeah.
time.
So, mom, uh, I need to wash my clothes. I need to get a room. I need about $150. Well, what happened to the $100 that I just sent you? Oh, I
Mhm.
done used that already. So,
Yeah.
and she, now she understands,
Yeah.
as I'm understanding, as she listens to this podcast, as she's doing her due diligence and her homework and her research like you. She was like, man, I was enabling. I
Yeah.
like, yes, ma'am, you were, but your mom, you love your baby. You did not want me to be without.
Yep.
So, but she was like, I go, if you were to ever fall again or relapse again, I couldn't do that, Derek. And I was
Yeah.
like, I get it, and you shouldn't have to. And my mom took out a lot of loans and a lot of different things,
Yeah.
and I help pay that back for her. I help make my amends because it's like your son. I took culpability. I took
Yep.
responsibility and on my part, but understanding how you are enabling. And I think you shared about that in lesson 3 where you can't do it for him and you
Yeah.
wanted to do it, but it was enabling him. How understand that you were enabling him, how did that have you okay, press the brakes and let you take a step back to I need
Yeah.
to let him do it for himself.
Yeah. That was, when I finally understood, I'm taking away, his ability to do it on his own. So what I kind of started to understand and what I share with other parents is, what we worry about, all we care about is, are they hungry and are they homeless?
Mm-hmm.
And my son was both at times. And it's an unimaginable feeling, and any parent will understand. It's this guttural like pain that you can't explain when you know your child is hungry or homeless. And so you'll do anything to avoid that. However, like you said, you had to get to a point where you knew what you wanted, if you were ready to change. And so it's really fine tuning what you will and won't be able to do, creating boundaries. We all hear about the creating boundaries. And it
Yes.
is so important. Those boundaries are so critical, right? But I didn't understand that yet. And I didn't understand natural consequences until I finally started letting some of that happen. But those boundaries are, I think that is it's boundaries are created by communication, number one. And so it's learning to communicate. And that is a skill. It's a skill to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill to do it with patience. It's a skill to do it with your family. We feel like we're doing everything right, but there are some really incredible communication skills that you can learn in order to create those boundaries, create a meaningful relationship, and a workable one that's going to improve and prosper, even in light of the substance use disorder. So it's really determining, okay, I'm not going to pay to get you out of jail. I'm not going to pay for your rent. I'm not going to pay for your food. There are resources for all these things, by the way. When I said, I parents don't want our kids to be homeless or hungry, there are so many resources out there across this nation so our children don't have to be homeless or hungry. And we all know it. We all know it. But you have to act on those resources. So there's shelters, there's, food pantries, there's things like that. And there's a lot of uh, recovery associations that really, really help now. Even like United Way, for example, you
Right.
can, or 211.
Mm-hmm.
211 is a great resource. So there's all those resources. But as a parent, you don't want to think about you are the resource. So you got to take yourself out of that so they can go figure out there's all these resources out there. Utilize those, number one. But there is a time when it is okay to help. I firmly believe. And that time is when your loved one has chosen to get help. And if they need a little bit of help, a little assistance to go to IOP or to go to a counselor, and they need the copay for the counselor, as long as this was my boundary, as long as my son gave me the permission to hear from the counselor or hear from whatever to say, yes, he showed up. Yes, we had I don't want to know what you talked about, but I want that accountability that you are being accountable to what we've decided. I will absolutely help pay for your recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I will help pay for recovery. I'm grateful for that. Every day I'm grateful for that. And I don't ever take that for granted. I will help pay for recovery, but I won't help pay for you to perpetuate your addiction in any
Right.
way, shape, or form anymore.
I like that. I really do. And I think as I read lesson 24, because again, that one, the book is great in its entirety. That just stuck out to me because I could, as a parent and as a child, um, as someone's child, um, these lessons feel like they build off of one another.
Yeah.
And next is lesson 5: accept that you can release your addicted loved one. And I think you spoke to that. And I know for me and for my mom, as I've talked to her, that's a very hard one. And I
Yeah.
would love to know from your perspective, from your experience, what did that mean for Lisa and your family and your son to release your addicted loved one? Because I know when it comes to my daughter and her mental health, is very hard to because I want to pick her up, and I'm a dad. I want to hold her. I want to save her. I want the best for her.
Yeah.
And it's a very hard decision to release her, uh, and of course hungry and homeless. Definitely don't want that. But it was very hard to release her. To You have to learn some lessons on your own to see where you are, who you've hurt, and if you want to do anything about it. And if you do, like you, I'm here to help on that regard, but I cannot enable, or I cannot contribute to your own devices. So
Yeah.
how did you release your addicted loved one? How did that sit with you?
This can be really hard, and I've talked about this before with other folks. And for me, releasing was understanding that my child could die. And I can say that today, but for a long time I could not get to that point. I couldn't. We turn on the television all the time and we hear about, you know, death overseas, mass shootings, just loss of life in many different ways. School, I mean, young people at a fraternity, that drank too much, and they no longer, family no longer has their son or their daughter. Um, I could not, nobody, no parent can sit there and say, can think about their child's death or have a level of understanding or acceptance about their child's death. But for me, when I started to say, okay, I can come to terms with the possibility of his death, it again set me free, because we nobody has a guarantee for tomorrow. I don't have a guarantee, 30 minutes from now. Nobody does. And it was just coming to that realization, I could lose him in
Mm.
this. And I started doing a lot of reading and things about things about how to get through that. There was a great book, I think it's called Solve for Happy.
Yes,
And
that's a good book. Yes.
yeah, and he lost his son to a very standard. It was an appendectomy that shouldn't, he should never
Yeah.
have lost his son through that. But he talks about that, and it was so powerful to me to understand that even through loss, my son has made unbelievable contributions to this world, unbelievable contributions to this world and to the people that he's touched. And I recognize that, and I have to be okay with that. My son is still alive today. I am.
Hmm.
I thank God for that every single day that I exist. But I have he you know, any of us, like, I can walk outside and get hit by a bus, as we say, that cliche statement, but
Right.
I don't have him guaranteed here for tomorrow. I'm grateful I have him today. So I don't look past today anymore. I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for his sobriety today. I'm grateful for his life today. I can accept that I can lose him, but it gives me freedom. It's hard to explain. It's hard to put that into words exactly, but it did.
No, I get it. I get it. The freedom of understanding that the choices that we make do affect our livelihood, but at
Yeah.
the same time, we could be gone in the next breath. And
Yeah.
that is a certain freedom. And you want to make sure whatever breath that we still have left, that we are giving back, and we're doing it
Yeah.
in a loving way. And I understand that it gave me freedom to release my daughter to, hey, I'm here for you. You don't have to lie, manipulate, or deceive me, but I'm here for you if you need me, and we can hold each other accountable. I
Yeah.
am. You have other examples in your life, but I'm your dad. I've been where you are. I've been homeless. I've lied and manipulated. I've been hungry. Mental health is definitely on the forefront. You saw me struggle with it when we was growing up. You saw me struggle with my addiction in your early adulthood, but you
Yeah.
see where I'm at now, and how the help has helped me help others.
Yeah.
My dad kicked me out of the house twice
Wow.
because of lesson 4 and lesson 5, because he had to understand that he could not enable, and I could not come and disrespect his home with
Right.
him and my mother, and he had to learn to let me go.
I didn't need to let you go.
He did. He had to learn to let me go, and he had to learn, hey, you know what, God, I trust you, and your will be done in my son's life, and I trust the outcome. So, lesson 6, do what works. I think that is lessons 1 through 5. And then now we get to lesson 6 is do what works.
Yeah.
What was that for you? And we're going to finish this list before we get out of here today because I want to do this.
Okay.
This is the
I'll do it
purpose.
real
Yes,
quick.
yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely down for doing that. Do what works. What is
So,
that? What is that for you? And what was that for your son?
well, I recognized very quickly what my son did to make it all work. He once he established his sober living situation, his sober community, he would go to his meetings every day. He participated, he went and worked out, he got a job, he went to counseling. He did all the critical steps, which means chronic care, that he chronically cared for himself like he was supposed to. He did what worked, and guess what? He stayed sober. So I had to adapt that too, or adopt, excuse me. I had to adopt that for myself. Like why am I not doing what works here? So I did the same thing. I did the same thing. I got involved. I got counseling. I started working out more regularly. I talked to people. I did all the things that I was supposed to do too. And guess what? That works. Go figure.
Right.
It worked.
It does. No, I feel like that's important because as a mother, and that's what we were focusing on your ability to maneuver and educate and
Mm,
pivot when it came to, okay, my son has an issue, he has a problem. I just can't sit idly by and do nothing.
yeah.
Okay, I did that, understanding lessons 1 through 6, what I had to do, let go, connect, can't do it for him, can't enable, had to release. Now he's doing the work. What
Mhm.
work as a mother do I need to do for myself? I
Amen.
like that. That's very important because I feel like what work as a parent, as a mother, as a dad, do I need to do for myself with a child or family member that is experiencing mental health and substance use disorders that impacts my life? What do I
Yeah.
need to do? And I feel
Yeah.
like that's very important. And I had to learn that. What do I need to do that works? One, I know I had to stay clean and I had to stay sober. I had to continue my program. I had to continue my recovery for me.
Mhm.
And I don't equate recovery to just, I don't use it exclusively just for mental health and substance use disorder. Recovery is what we're doing right now. We're having a
Yeah.
conversation and building
Yes.
connections. Right. Recovery for me is inspirational change moving forward, meaning I hug my wife, kiss my kids. I go help my dad cut the grass. I go
I
get
love
some
that.
sun on my face. The day at the beach, go get groceries.
It's beautiful.
I appreciate the small things because it's at some point in my life they were taken away. A hot shower means everything.
Me too.
Yeah. So
Mm.
do what works. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, lesson 7, release yourself from guilt and judgment.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
Where, how long did that take?
And it took a long time. Probably, I think for me, the thing that helped me release it was writing. And I started to understand that we have this guilt based on knowledge that we have today. I know today that I could have done everything differently back then, but back then I didn't have any of that information. I didn't know. So why am I guilting myself about what I didn't know back then? I did what I knew back then. So that is where guilt is from the past. What I know today, if I knew then what I know today, I would have done it differently. And I
Right.
didn't. So I had to let go of that guilt. I had to say, I'm not, I'm not going to accept that for myself anymore because I did the best that I could at that time in that situation with what I knew. And yes, I made a million mistakes. Yes, I was addicted to my son. I was addicted to my son's addiction and figuring out my son's addiction. Um, I finally said, I'm not doing that to myself. So it's letting go of that.
Yes. That's powerful. You were addicted to your son's addiction and trying to figure that out.
I
That
was.
is wow. I mean, that just gave me goosebumpies. Like how my wife say, I got goosebumpies. That gave me a little and a good chill. That gave me like, whoo, I've never heard that put that way before. No, I'm serious, Miss Lisa. I've never heard that. And I, man, yeah. I've been there when it comes to my daughter. I was addicted to
Mm.
her mental health and trying to figure
Yes.
out how I could be the best parent. And yeah, I made mistakes too. And
Yeah.
our relationship is being reconciled as we speak.
Wonderful.
It's still taking time.
I
And
know.
I respect that. When you release your guilt, when you release yourself from your guilt and your judgment, for you, is that a respect that you had to gain? You had to learn how to give your son respect in what he needs to do that works for him, do what works, and then give yourself that same type of respect.
Yeah.
Okay, I made mistakes, didn't know what I know now, but I can move forward in respect to
Yeah.
myself and his recovery. Was that was that there? Did that come to when you released that guilt and that judgment, having a respect for what had happened, having a respect for the boundaries that you set?
Yeah.
Did that take place?
It did. It's called forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I forgave myself, and it's a hard thing to do because, we as the parent, believe it or not, we have just as much guilt and shame. I wrote in the book all the things I think I did, well, maybe I did this wrong, or maybe because of this that happened, or I should have done this or that. And we go through these things in our head, and all parents do it, but when you have someone with substance use disorder and mental health, you do it even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a point of forgiving myself again because I did the best that I could at the time. I had a young mind. I hadn't studied biology yet. I didn't understand the science. I didn't understand, you know, the what I call it, the what do you call it? I just lost the word. Natural circumstances. I didn't
Natural
understand that back
circumstances.
then. I didn't
Right.
know that back then. I didn't know the 12 steps. I didn't know all that. I didn't have any foundation. So I had to give myself the forgiveness for not knowing it, and say, I did what I could, and all of us parents need to do that. Really,
Mm-hmm.
we really need to forgive and move forward.
Right.
Truly,
Absolutely. Truly. Yes.
yeah,
For lesson nine, I mean, excuse me, for lesson 8, resist expectations and assumptions.
yeah.
That one is, what do you mean? I want a little bit more explanation on that lesson. Is that more for your son, or was that more for you, or was that a combination of both?
It was as a parent, it was for my son. So we
Okay.
put all these expectations on our children to live a particular life. You think, growing up when I did generationally, you went to school, you went to college or a trade school, you got married, you had kids, and you lived happily ever after. And it was just this family ties, which is an old sitcom
Hmm.
style life. And it's these expectations that that's just going to how it's going to be. And letting go of that is so rewarding because that's not what life looks like anymore. And I was so foolish to sort of box in what my expectations for were for another human. He is his own person. He has an art very, very artistic and brilliantly emotional mind, and he is who he is, and I love who he is. I respect who he is. But while I was raising him, I was trying to keep him in this predetermined box that should never have existed for him. I shouldn't have done that. But he and I have worked through that quite a bit,
Right.
and I love who he is today. I
Awesome.
loved who he was back then too, but I was still just had this idea. So it's such a false idea. So we gotta take away the other person's ability to be who they're gonna be.
I like that. Yeah, we do. Uh, I'm learning that from my daughter and my son. My son will be
Yeah.
15. We're about to go see him, and we're about to go see my daughter. And she just had her and her husband just had their first child, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm hoping that uh, I get to see her and my little grandbaby boy.
Yeah.
But I also understand if she's not ready for that. And I have to resist the expectations and the assumptions. Oh, when you I love knowledge. I love learning. I love I love learning. I love knowledge. I do. And I love learning from experience, strength, and hope. And
Yeah.
I had to put expectations down and assumptions down for my children and for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do have goals. It's okay to have goals, smart goals, short term and long term goals, but
Sure.
also understanding that might have to pivot, might have to switch. It's not a
Yeah.
straight line, but also enjoy the journey
Yeah.
and not necessarily, oh, I need to get to the next destination because
Mhm.
of these expectations and these assumptions. I need to enjoy the journey. I need to enjoy the ride. But if the life does life, how can I pivot and be okay with that? I
Yeah.
think that's a good lesson in resist expectation and assumptions and don't assume that everything is going to happen the way we plan it out. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
The final lesson is lesson 9, find gratitude. And
Yeah.
we're going to get to that where you'll probably answer it. I always, when I go speak, I always ask people at the end, give me 2 things they're grateful for. And the reason that I do that is
Mhm.
because I want them to hold on and let it ground them and have them focus more on the glass half full. Focus on the blessings that you have instead of the blessings that you do not. Because once you focus on that gratitude, it'll keep you connected to, okay, I'm having a crisis, mental health or substance use crisis. I have these couple things in my hand that I'm grateful for. And if for whatever reason I pick up, I use, or I act out, I might not have these things anymore. So that gratitude, lesson 9, what did you find gratitude in? What was the thing that made you appreciate or be thankful? And what is a couple things that you hold on to now?
So first, I want to say there's an actual biochemical change in the brain when you um, put forth your gratitudes. So doing gratitudes in the morning or before you go to bed or in a journal, they've actually really researched that, and there's an actual biochemical change. So it really does help improve your state of mind overall and kind of push down the negativity. So there's benefits on that on many, many levels. Um, for me, what was you kind of had a three-part question there, but I want to make sure I answer all of it.
What was when did you find your gratitude?
Hmm.
And what are a couple things that you're grateful for now?
Um, this is gonna seem a little strange, maybe, maybe not. I'm guessing you might even feel the same. I'm grateful for everything we've gone through.
Hmm.
We've gone through hell and back, and it's been a very traumatic 15 or so years, to say the least. But I am so every day I'm grateful for it because it has shown me things in myself, in my son, in resilience of our family, in it's brought us closer. It's connected me to other people in ways I could never have ever imagined. So those are the things today that I give great gratitude for every day, every single day that we did go through that. I wouldn't wish what we went through on any other family in the universe. Um, but I am grateful that we did at this point today.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's the main that's my biggest gratitude,
awesome.
the experience.
I share that same sentiment, so it's not strange. I share
Mhm.
that, and people look at me like I'm strange, and I say, "Y'all make." I set it up with that same.
I know, right? We are connected.
Yeah, we are. I set it up the same exact way. I'm like, listen, y'all might think this is strange, but I am grateful for what I went through. Again, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah,
Period. But I am grateful because I wouldn't have learned or been the person that I am without it.
right,
So
right. We
we
went
share that sentiment.
yeah,
Absolutely, we do. Real quick, when did that gratitude appear? Because now you are at the point where you are thankful. That's one of your biggest gratitudes is you wouldn't change your experience because you wouldn't be the Miss Lisa that you are now. and you wouldn't able to find a purpose to be able to serve your community the way you do. Because I believe
Mhm.
service, that's a big part of my recovery journey,
Yeah.
is service work. Last question. When did that gratitude start to show itself, start to birth itself?
Mhm. I think with the release of the book, with finishing the book and putting it in order and being able to deliver that to other people so they could get through it. I felt very grateful for the opportunity and the ability to do that, and, I'll forever be grateful for that.
Awesome. Listen, Miss Lisa, this has been fantastic. This has been a very informal, a very in my brain. I tell people sometimes I can't speak how I used to. My wife was like, "You still can, you're very articulate." I'm like, "Nah, had a lot of trauma, TBIs, a lot of drug use. So words just leave me and my
Same
mouth."
here. Same here. Mine's
So
age. Mine's a lot of age related, you know.
yeah, we pick on each other all the time. Like, yo, we're gonna be horrible when we get older. I'm like, who are you? No, who are you?
What was your name again?
What's your name again? You know, I have a joke that she and we'll leave off this. I have a joke. I'll be like, man, you know, I married a woman that looked just like you back in the day. She's like, you know what? I married a man that looked just like you.
That's a
So
great joke. That's a
yeah,
great one. I think I'm
we
gonna use that.
yeah, we goof on each other like that all the
I
time because
love
we
it.
are horrible. Our minds are horrible. Our memories are horrible. So
I know mine.
where can they find the book? What's the name and the title of the book again? Where can they find it, and where can they get more information about you, Miss Lisa?
Okay, awesome. So it is called Incurable Hope, a memoir and survival guide for coping with a loved one's addiction. It can be found at any bookstore across the nation. If they don't have it on their shelf, you can ask for it. It can be found on Amazon, of course. It is available on Audible, which you can get on audible.com or on Amazon. So you can essentially find it anywhere you want, anywhere books are sold, any kind, it's an ebook form. It is available to you. You can also just click on it on my website, www.lisagenosa.com. There is a Lisa Genova out there. So if you start GEN, it comes up sometimes hers. So it is GENNOSA. So lisagenosa.com. And there's a lot of the information that I've been able to share with others. And you can, again, click on the Amazon link or an Audible link there and pick it up from that.
Awesome. Sounds great. This has been fantastic. This has been a very great interview. I'm very blessed and thankful that you decided to join today for our audience and give me your experience, strength, and hope. As a mother, as a as a physician, as someone that's been in the medical field as long
Yeah.
as you have, I really appreciate that, giving your perspective on that. So thank you again so much for being here.
I feel the same, Derek. We're partners here in this, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk with you today as well.
I'll talk to you soon, Miss Lisa. You have a good day.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Listen, that's what we do here at Play the Tape. Another fantastic episode. Um, Listen, if you're facing a mental health crisis, 988, if you need information when it comes to shelters and other aspects of recovery, 211. If there's any type of medical emergency, always down 911. Listen, with hope comes peace. With peace comes understanding. With understanding comes love. And with love comes faith. And with that comes recovery. I love you. We love you. But most importantly, God loves you. Never forget that. Never forget that you are not alone. There are people like myself, like Miss Lisa, that would jump in that hole with you, jump in that pit with you because we know the way out. That's why we share that we would never change the experience that we have because now we are a lifeline. We are a bridge to help others get out of that darkness. And we don't take that lightly. Listen, love being of service to you. Thank you so much. Until next time, this has been Play the Tape. Peace.